All right, welcome into this episode 2 of the Mancast from the Tortured Man podcast. This is Ed and Chad coming at you again for another wonderful episode of the cast. Today, the episode title is Free East Palestine and hashtag Free East Palestine. And it isn't like the Gaza Strip, but it's dirtier and scarier right now. So with that, I'll throw that over to Ed.
Isn't that funny? Everybody's making a big deal about nothing. So a train wrecked and that town's all their kids are going to get cancer and die. What we fucking do? What's the big deal? Don't you know that there's a war going on in the Ukraine? That is far more important than American citizens being killed by a corporation that makes billions of dollars in their government's neglect. I don't see what the problem is personally.
Well, that's a good point. I mean, why is everybody fussing about contaminated drinking water? They've been dealing with crap like that in Flint and Chicago and cities all across the country for decades now. And
trains derail literally, on average about 3 times a day or so. And just last year, there was a chemical fire because of a train wreck in Chicago, right outside of Chicago. Did anybody care? Of course they did. It was in Chicago, but I digress. This happened in an area where people don't care, and I don't think they should.
well, I have an elevated train track behind me about 75 yards back that way. And I just want you to know that I've got no worries whatsoever.
None. I mean, the braking systems on those trains were updated just 70 years ago. I don't even understand how anybody can be worried about the brakes or those bearings. Those bearings were put in 70 years ago, too. So everything's fine. There is nothing to see here.
90% of the train cars that go by here, they say Norfolk Southern across them. That's the gold standard. So, I got nothing to worry about.
And here's another thing, too. This is a point I really like to make. If this was really serious, Joe Biden would have showed up. And if Joe Biden's not there, clearly there's nothing to see here. And, Pete Buttigieg did show up, but let's face it, he only did that because Trump did, and he was jealous. Otherwise, he probably wouldn't have showed up at all. So why even bother talking about this and the death and the cancers and sick children and animals dropping dead all over the place? I mean, who really cares? Because it's not important, because this administration has declared that it's not, and they have never lied. So there you go. That's why I'm all for Joe Biden. I mean, there you go. I'm wearing the shirt. Everybody can see it. Obviously, let's go, Joe Biden. You're awesome.
For Joe Biden. That's what the FJB for Joe Biden.
So there's no reason to worry, folks. Joe Biden's not worried about it. Oh, and another way that
he doesn't care, I don't care.
That's right. Why even bother with it? And here's the thing, too. Are you really concerned about the air and the water? They said it was fine. And to prove it, everybody in that works for the EPA or for Southern Norfolk, to prove that everything is fine there, they're wearing hazmat suits to make everybody feel comfortable.
So they took a sip of the water. It must be fine.
So I don't really see what the issue is here. I think this is way overblown. It's only going to kill about 30 to 50,000 people when it's all said and done.
Oh, wait.
Whoopie-doo.
You mean this is serious?
No.
You mean there's actual repercussions for this?
Oh, yeah. Well, 30 to 50,000 Americans potentially getting cancer, long-term illnesses, and death really isn't something that the administration would concern themselves with, which makes me feel comfortable.
All I want to know is, did Pete get some Trump water? That's really my biggest concern right now. Did he get himself?
Pete would probably like to get a little bit of Trump something, but that's probably not going to happen.
Oh, no.
Because Trump doesn't swing in that direction. So, but as long as we're going to talk about it, then one of the things that I think people might not know is that vinyl chloride, when it is burnt, becomes hydrogen chloride, which is really fun. And then that gets into the air and all those little particles that are floating around the air. And when they merge with water, it becomes hydrochloric acid. And it falls out of the sky. And again, I don't see what there's to worry about. Look, if you're afraid of hydrochloric acid falling on you, I say you're just a big baby.
True
It only
story.
kills
I don't know
everything that
why.
it comes in contact with. I mean, all it's going to do is kill all the vegetation and the animals and the fish. That's all it's going to do. Children are going to get cancer. It happens anyway. So whoopie do. Look, if you're going to get, there's a really cool thing that happens here. There's another thing that happens. So I got this off the internet. So just to be clear, while burning vinyl chloride, another byproduct is phosgen. This is fun. When inhaled, phosgen disrupts the interaction between the lungs and bloodstream. It makes it so that oxygen cannot get into the bloodstream and carbon dioxide cannot get out of the bloodstream. That is from Kimberly Garrett, who is an environmental toxicologist, PhD from Northwestern University. So she probably doesn't know what she's talking about because all she has is a PhD. So that's also fun. And phosgen, by the way, was all joking aside now, phosgen is a chemical that they used in World War I. And let's face it, we used lots of all kinds of horrible chemicals from one side to the other, trying to kill each other. And that is one of those. So this stuff is so dangerous. And our government and Norfolk have just been looking the other way. Now, as it turns out, I just read today, it's not on my notes, because just read this, that Norfolk Southern, where they were trucking this dirt to when this whole surrounding area that where they burn, that they're digging it out and they're taking it so far, a minuscule amount, because the two areas they were taking it to, one in Michigan and one in Texas, who are plants that actually take material that's contaminated and they clean it as best they can. Except for Norfolk Southern didn't tell them that it was coming from this area, so they have ceased taking anything. So that stuff's just sitting there now. There's trucks of it just filled, can't go anywhere, just going to stay there because these plants won't take it because they weren't given the proper information and they're not prepared to strip these chemicals out of the earth. So there's that too. So that's real fun.
What the hell, man? Just like one just disaster after another with these guys. My biggest thing is Norfolk not even having the gall to show up, to these town halls and just leaving everybody hanging. And
well, the president
to
of the company,
that they did send people, to the extent that they did send people out, subcontractors, to let people know if they could go back in their homes. They make these people sign hold harmless agreements.
Yes.
Before they'll actually check their houses to see if they're safe to go into.
Right. You have to hold harmless and you can't sue us. It's crazy. So
shady, man.
The president of Norfolk Southern refused to go because he said that it was too dangerous for him to go. But since there's actual people who actually still do reporting, real reporters, like Seymour Hersh, for instance, since there are still real people out there that do real reporting, what they found out is by doing some simple, it's called investigating. Now, this wasn't a real deep investigation because all they really had to do was dial a phone number. And then the police answered the phone and said, hey, this is a police department. And then they said, hey, were there any death threats to anybody over there because of this accident? And they were like, nope. And there you go. So there was nothing to be afraid of because nobody made any threats. He's just doesn't care. He doesn't care to show up. That's the problem with all of them. Biden doesn't care to show up. Nobody's administration cares to show up. Buttigieg showed up simply because Trump showed up. He was literally there in less than 24 hours. That's the only reason that he showed up. If Donald Trump wouldn't have gone there, then Buttigieg still wouldn't have been there. He was there specifically to try to save face for the administration. Of course, that totally backfired.
And just a word from our sponsors real quick. We do have some gear that former mayor of South Bend, Indiana is hawking. There's this really nice iPad case and skin for $52.92. If you would like the superhero Mayor Pete logo and cartoon for anything here, a sticker, laptop skin, or iPad skin, let us know and use the code hashtag Free East Palestine for 10% off.
Cool.
Back to you, Ed.
Well, thank you. That was cool. That was unexpected. I didn't know. In our pre-production meeting, nobody informed me of that. So now we have infiltrated well water. Obviously, the lakes, the streams, and the ponds around there, the fish are floating because they're already dead. Barnyard animals are also dead. Chickens are dead. Foxes, there is actually a guy who literally had a fox farm, and he raised foxes, and they're dead. This is horrible, and what's happening to these people is not going to get better. We're talking about blood diseases, autoimmune diseases, severe lung diseases. All these chemicals and the chemicals that they turn into are carcinogens, which cause cancer. So God knows. And here's the amount that they were exposed to was so far and away out of the realm of reasonable. And then they let those people come back literally in less than 72 hours, and then pretended everything was okay, and then walked it back and said that it wasn't okay and the water wasn't fine. It to me, it's just proof positive that our government is so out of control, and they're so in bed with these large corporations that they're protecting the corporation, and ultimately tens of thousands of people are going to be ill for sure, and enormously, like way out of the realm of normal, are going to have cancers, particularly children, sterile issues. It's just going to be bad for a long time. These people are going to end up with COPD. They're going to die. And nobody seems to care. And at the very same time that all this is going on, and it's Joe Biden on President's Day covertly shoots over to the Ukraine to give an authoritarian dictator another $500 million of our money.
Making it rain, baby.
Yeah, it's so shocking. He was so proud of himself when he was talking about it. We are now at $24 billion that we have given a despot. Anybody who thinks I don't want to school, we'll get to that. So the fact that he could go there and do that, the amount of money that was involved, that is literally for the people that are in America, that are American citizens who a tragedy was brought to them through no fault of their own. And then they were lied to. And then they were hurt even more because of those lies. And they've been offered literally a stipend. We have illegal aliens in 4- and 5-star hotel accommodations costing up to $2,000 per week per illegal alien. $500 million on top of already $120 billion going over to the Ukraine. And these people here can't get any help. And the only person who has really helped them, really stood up to help them, other than their own Red Cross and the normal infrastructure, is Donald Trump. You know, the most evil man who ever lived is the only person who has stepped up and done anything to help these people. Our government, $500 million to the Ukraine, that's $364,000 per resident that was affected by this. Think they could use that money? And I'd much, much rather have it go to them. That's for damn sure.
Absolutely. And I mean, that's probably the most infuriating, thing of all, is that we're just throwing so much money at Ukraine without any talk about peace, without any talk about de-escalation, without any talk about overting freaking World War III. And meanwhile, people here back at home are getting poisoned, and this guy is nowhere to be found. It's disgusting. It really is. How else to put it? I'm not. We're not Trump guys.
No, didn't vote for him.
To the extent that we're like, we honestly kind of wish he would just go away.
True.
But at the same time, and even if he just showed up at East Palestine for a photo op or whatever people want to say, so what? What he did was create a domino effect where other people were going to be held accountable if they didn't come as well. People like the freaking transportation secretary who should have been there weeks ago, and then who gets his little man panties in a tizzy because reporters ask him difficult questions, not even really difficult questions. And then I don't know if you've seen the latest cut where he basically, sloughs off the reporter to his press secretary, and then his press secretary refuses to answer questions with the press unless they turn the cameras off.
Because that seems
And it's like,
reasonable.
wait, you're the press secretary, we're the press, and we have cameras in a public space. You're a public official. Why aren't you willing to just answer our questions under these terms? And she absolutely would not do it. So
Well, that brings you.
We knew this guy was worthless from the jump, but it's just, it just becomes more and more and more apparent. And I don't understand how that. I mean, we'll get to my frustration and what I think people should do in a minute. But what were you going to say?
Look what Mayor Pete did to the reporter that was asking him questions. He has him and his minions. They want to know her name. They want to take her picture. For asking a question? She's a damn reporter. And you're a public servant. And so that's the largest part of the problem here. And for anybody that's paying attention, I don't care what side of the aisle you come down on. I don't care if you're alt-right, and I don't care if you're a communist lefty. This is unforgivable, the way that this administration has handled this whole thing so far. It's as if they don't care if these people live or die at all. They don't want to do anything to help them. Joe Biden himself at an ABC interview the other day, when they were asking about East Palestine, he was just so arrogant about, well, I've talked to governors of Pennsylvania and Ohio, and I've talked to the congressmen and the senators and federal government. So then they asked him about the mayor, and he was like, the mayor? Pfft, I ain't talking to the mayor. It's enough to make your blood boil. Anybody, regardless of where you are politically, if you can't look at this and understand that your government literally does not care if you live or die, here is the proof. Period. End of sentence. And for people to be championing this administration as if they're doing something well, first off, the guy's got dementia. Joe himself, I don't find very responsible, because Joe doesn't even know Joe's Joe. He's a mess. He really is in a lot of trouble. And the way that we know that this is a fact, without all the proof that's already out there, you don't need me to spell it out. But he just had his annual physical, and there was no cognitive test because he can't pass it, because Joe has dementia or early onset Alzheimer's. Something's going on, and nobody's going to do anything about it. As a matter of fact, they're going to tote his very, very oldest president ever in history of America, period, old president, and they're going to drag him out, and they're going to let him run again.
Probably.
That's how disconnected this government is. And I am not, by the way, for anybody who wants to point fingers, I'm not a Republican. Don't lump me in with those asshats either. They're just as responsible for this, and none of them are doing anything about it either. It's just the administration is the face of our government. They should have been there day one. They should have been helping people. They should have been giving them hotel vouchers, food vouchers. They should be paying them. They should make sure that they're receiving all the money and the compensation they deserve for not being able to go to their jobs or for getting ill. They're doing none of that. It's disgusting. And it infuriates me, because we are treating people who are entering our country illegally as if they're house guests that we punched in the face and we have to take care of them. And the people who are actually citizens who have done nothing wrong are treated like they're garbage, and they don't count at all. And the reason that they don't count to this administration is plain and simple. They're just a bunch of generally white, lower middle class people, and they really don't count to this administration. They don't have care for them at all. Period. End of sentence. Period. And it's anybody who voted for Joe Biden, this is your wake-up call that this guy is a sycophant. Everybody in his administration is disgusting. I love America. I hate our government with a passion. And this is why. There is no excuse for this to be going on. We're supposed to be the shining city on the hill. We're a joke. And this proves it.
Yeah. Yeah. Just look at our press corps. All they do is run block for these guys, and they just kind of cater to it. If it wasn't for a few voices, they wouldn't really get any kind of pushback. And then speaking of real reporters like Seymour Hersh, and the Nord Stream pipeline, what do you want to call it? Because it was an act of war, I guess you could call it.
It is an act of war.
The fact that he's uncovered that, we definitely freaking blew up the pipeline. Anybody with a brain in their head should have known that right from Jump Street. The fact that the media would even try to tell you that Russia blew up their own pipeline. If you would ever read another word from that person ever again, you're a fool. Because they're clearly a propagandist. So, but then you have all of these major outlets now that even now since Hersh, the guy that used to be connected to the Times and used to be connected to the New Yorker and all these major publications, the guy who's Pulitzer Prize winning journalist, broken some of the largest stories of all time. And I can tell you, when there was a Republican president in power and they could break this story about Abu Ghraib and go on about how bad that was and try to hold the Republican president, because that was during Bush, right? Abu Ghraib.
Yes. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So all of a sudden, like now he's not legitimate, but then everybody was like, Seymour Hersh, he's the greatest reporter ever. Look what he uncovered. Oh my God. And every outlet was all over it. But now magically when a Democrat for some reason is in the office, they don't care. They don't even want to touch the story. Nobody will even talk to Seymour Hersh. It's wild. I've never seen anything like it.
And Seymour Hersh has won Pulitzer Prizes amongst many, many, many other awards, but that one being the highest one in his field. And this guy is legit. So his credibility is not in question whatsoever. So if this guy is doing a report and he has the intel that says that the United States government did this, then we probably did it. There is no logical reason for Putin to have done that or have his armies do that, because they need that money. There's so many sanctions against them. They need the free flow of those natural resources, the gas, to go to Germany and to get paid for it. So why would he shoot himself in the foot? That's idiotic. You could call Putin a lot of things, and I probably agree with you with most of them, but stupid's not one of them. So obviously he didn't do that. It's the same thing that we did. And they went after Democrats, particularly like Tulsi Gabbard, when they were claiming Bashir al-Assad gassed his own people. What? It makes no sense that he would gas his own people. It was so stupid. It was a reasonable person would never think a thing like that. And yet she said, this is unreasonable. And now you would think that Tulsi Gabbard was an alt-right racist because she simply disagreed with their with the premise that Bashir al-Assad would gas his own people. That's just ridiculous. We all know why we were in Syria, but we can get into that at another day. So
same reason we're in Ukraine, because there's money to be made. There's natural resources there. Same
that's
reason
right.
We're in Ukraine.
It's always follow the money, right?
Absolutely. Without question. Without fail. But yeah, one of my favorite things about the Nord Stream pipeline is the fact that it's the largest release of methane, the largest man-made release of methane of all time. And I still haven't seen the little girl who likes to say, "How dare you? I should be in school."
Greta,
you stolen my childhood. Yeah, where's she at?
Where's Greta?
Where's this giant? I mean, this is literally like you want to get all the cows gone, so we don't have any more cow farts. This is literally like 17 billion cows farting at once for freaking days on end.
Okay, so I did a little research on the methane gas because there are wild reports, but these are actual numbers now. This is from the University of Berlin in Germany. The largest natural, not the largest natural leak of methane that we know about, that we have calculated, is 90,000 metric tons, which was released over the course of months. And that was extraordinarily damaging in itself. This one, I'm going to make sure I got my numbers right, so I'm looking away. The Nord Stream 2, it's estimated so far at this point, because it's not capped yet, has released 14 million tons into the air. 14 million. 90,000 was the worst one we ever saw before. This one, and counting, is 14 million tons. And the irony of this is this 14 million tons that has been into the air is literally 32% of what Germany normally would have put into the air in CO2, 32% in an entire year. We did this. So this very, very, very green administrations are the ones that are responsible for the largest man-made disaster, environmental disaster in the history of Earth. And it's the Biden administration. And where are all the do-gooders? Why aren't they screaming about this? Where are all the greenies and all the college kids that are usually losing their minds over somebody driving a friggin' SUV, right? But this is okay with them? Shocking, right?
Yeah.
So the message that we're all seeing here, obviously, is that natural disasters don't happen. Man-made disasters don't happen. None of these things happen if the Democrats don't care about them. Democrats don't care about them, then they don't happen. This party used to be a party that was reasonable. Classic liberals like John Kennedy, even up to Bill Clinton, these were reasonable people, and you could have conversations. Today's Democrats, and I won't call them liberals because the term liberal does not describe these people at all. These people are a bunch of woke, just ideologues. All they care about is getting reelected. They don't care who they harm. They don't care who lives. They don't care who dies, so long as it's not them or their family. They will destroy every single one of us if that's what it takes. And I'm so disheartened by this because I have family members and friends that literally act like none of this stuff actually matters because the news streams that they watch or they listen to don't talk about it, so therefore it doesn't exist. And this is a point that you bring up all the time, that from both sides, right or left, these people live in a bubble and they don't really know what's going on in the world. And it's frightening because if nothing took the mask, the blinders, if they didn't come off during COVID, they're never coming off. So I'm heartbroken that I used to always hold out hope that we would be better and that we would figure it out. And at the end, they would push us too far and we would say no. And we would push back as hard as necessary. I don't believe that anymore. It seems to me that the plurality of people that are on, and not just in America, but around the world, are obedient pieces of dog shit that will do whatever they're told without fail. And the people like us who are engaged to try to see what is going on, to try to make a difference in the world, to try to fix the things that are wrong, we don't stand a chance. And it's heartbreaking. But here we go again. Just another, and they're going to slough it off. And voices like ours will talk about it. But man, we're so small in comparison to the other voices. Is anybody really paying attention? Does anybody care? Because sure don't seem like it to me.
Yeah, it's a good segue to another point I wanted to make, and sort of another point of frustration. I'm frustrated with, Norfolk first and foremost, with the government equally probably. And then I'm starting to get a little frustrated with the people of East Palestine, and I'm so sorry for saying that, because they're the victims, and I don't want to blame them for what they're going through, and I know my heart goes out to them. I really feel badly, but at a certain point, you have to take matters into your own hands, and you're right. We unfortunately, a lot was revealed through COVID. People are willing to do a lot and take a lot and deal with a lot and roll over for a lot. And this is no different. But my theory is if you really want to get something done, if you really want to get Norfolk to show up to your town and to answer your questions, you you watch the train tracks one weekend, and then the next weekend, everybody in the town, there's like 5,000 people in the town. Everybody who's willing, surely at least half, will show up at a time when the train's a couple hours before it's coming, and or an hour maybe, and you park buses and tractors and semis and whatever else you can park across the damn tracks, and then you surround that whole thing with people, and you just say, look, we're going to sit here, we're going to occupy these rail tracks until you bastards come and talk to us, and you fix these problems, until you answer our questions. You start stroking checks, you start fixing shit, you start cleaning shit, you start proving to us, you show us the actual data. Until you start doing that and you start being accountable, you're not going to get your train running up and running again, because we all know that's why we're so hasty to get this shit lit on fire, so that you could get it moved and get your rails back up and get your trains moving.
That's what it's really about.
The only thing these people will listen to is money, because that's all they care about, because they're evil and that's their God. And so if you want to really get through to them, you threaten their God, and that's their money. And that's the way to do it, in my opinion. And all of it in my dad said, you would get arrested for that. And I'm like, well, okay, then let the TV camera see that. All right. And guess what? People like Chad Brown are going to be going to East Palestine then to back these people up, because it's only, 4-hour drive, and they, at that point, they need help. And that would be a spark. It would be a huge spark and a big fire that needs to be set at this point for anything to happen. But, I can't light it from here. People who are the victims have to do it. It has to happen organically. I'm just frustrated that these guys haven't pulled together and mobilized in any capacity at this point to get anything done for themselves. That's frustrating to me. I understand your mayor's a podunk hillbilly, like, probably a lot of the people in town, like probably a lot of the people, in the town I grew up with, and a lot of the people I still am very close to and love dearly. He probably is going, whoa, I signed up to be the mayor of a freaking tiny little 5,000 person town. I didn't know I was ever going to deal with anything like this.
Right.
He's probably working construction in the daytime. You know what I mean?
It's a little out of his wheelhouse.
Yeah, he might be a farmer or something, right? So, like, yeah, this isn't like, and I'm not disparaging him. I'm just saying the man wasn't prepared for this, and the people who supposedly were are 3 weeks too late. You know what I mean? So, what a deal, man. I don't even know what else to say.
And so to your point, those people not only should have done something similar to what you're suggesting, but their demands should have been right over here, some miles away, is federal land. And you're going to give it all to us, and you're going to build us all brand new houses and infrastructure, and you're going to give us everything back that you just stole from us. And Norfolk Southern should be on the hook to pay for every cent of it. And then Norfolk Southern can sit there and take 1,000 years to clean up that mess, because nobody will be there to be affected by, so it won't matter. Now, of course, they won't do a thing like that, but that's the demand that I would be making. Another thing that I'm very disheartened by. We can have a criminal get into a shootout with cops and get killed, and they'll burn a city down over a criminal doing a bad thing. Here we have overall over 10,000 people affected in that town, and then the farmers and around the surrounding communities, right? So we're talking about close to about 10,000 people. and we can't, nobody's going out there to fight for them, to champion for them. Where are the environmentalists here? The environmentalists show up everywhere. They're not needed, but here where they are, they don't show up, which just proves what you and I have always talked about and always said, is that it's like fighting for women's rights. Well, only in a country where women's have more rights than anywhere else in the world, because you don't want to go fight for them and say, I don't know, Saudi Arabia, right? So nobody wants to, it's so easy to say that you're all about the environment, but when you actually have to show up and do something about it, yeah, their actions don't match their words. And here's proof. I don't have anything against Greta Thunberg, because she's was at the time a 16-year-old girl. And the last time I took what a 16-year-old thought about the world seriously was never. So that wasn't happening then, nor will it ever.
Be at school.
But there are serious people who are adults, or at least alleged that they're serious about such things, and none of them have. Where's Al Gore, the most serious environmental guy in the world, right? Where is he? He hasn't said a word about any of this. It's deplorable.
No, but he's probably got jet lag from his recent private jet flight over to the World Economic Forum in Davos.
To be fair, his plane admits love. So wherever he's flying, love floats through the air and is saving the planet. That's what you don't know about his plane. His plane's emissions are love, Chad. And he's saving the world one plane ride at a time. Not to mention all the love that's emitted from his massive estate in Tennessee, who has a higher signature than even private businesses do in the state of Tennessee, so that him and his wife can have multiple SUVs and multiple outdoor pools that are heated and that kind of stuff. And I think that's good for the environment, by the way, because if he's cool, calm, collected, if Man Bear Pig feels good, he can emit more love, and then he'll save us all.
I think back during the time whenever he came out with the Inconvenient Truth BS, his footprint for that mansion in Tennessee was like $10,000 a month in energy.
Mm-hmm.
And it's just like, I'm ethereal, guy. It's the Man Bear Pig. Super ethereal, guys. And anyway, what a piece of shit that guy. I'm just gonna go ahead and say it. What a piece of shit.
Well, and it never ends with these people.
And he likes massages the same way Deshaun Watson likes massages too.
Right. And we're just, while this accident had already occurred, Mayor Pete's running around having conferences talking about that the real problem in transportation is there's too many white construction workers. What? And don't forget, overpasses are racist. I mean, this is what this guy's doing, right? Because he's got to be the worst secretary in the history of being a secretary of any department ever. And he never would have showed up there if Trump wouldn't have showed up. So for all you people out there who hate Trump with such a passion, and I'm no fan in particular, but at least he puts his money where his mouth is. He showed up. He brought truckloads and truckloads. They got enough water there from Trump that they won't have to buy bottled water for the next 5 friggin' years. They're covered at least for that. And before anybody whines and cries about it's just bottled water, well, while it may just be bottled water, it is the only substance you need to live past 48 hours. So figure it out.
Well, and you said that there were no environmentalists down there, but interestingly enough, this event has brought together the likes of Aaron Brockovich and Tucker Carlson. Oddly enough, I saw her on there reporting about the incident, and she was reporting about there being locks on wellheads and how all the drinking fountains in the school are shut down. Mm-hmm. So what's that tell you? What's that tell you, man?
Tells that water is perfectly safe, Chad, especially if you're wearing a hazmat suit. This is how absurd. This has all become our country. We're a laughing stock. You know how I know we're a laughing stock? Because reasoned people are laughing at our own country like we're doing. We're an embarrassment. I would imagine that somewhere, if you take all the bureaucrats, lobbyists, elected politicians that are all collected in Washington, D.C., they have the combined IQ of a snail. And we treat these people like they're learned and that they are geniuses or somehow smarter and better. That's not true at all. These people are literally idiots. They have never worked a day in their life for the most part. Some of the most tenured people in government right now, Nancy Pelosi, Mitch McConnell, the president himself, Lindsey Graham, none of these people have worked in the private sector or earned a check in their whole lives. And we act like they know something that we don't. They don't know shit. As a matter of fact, everybody who's listening to this, they don't even read the bills that they put into law for us to follow, because they know no matter what they put in as law, they don't have to follow it. And that should outrage everyone. We should be revolting in the streets over these things. You can't get most people. This is what most people do. If you're out anywhere and you bring any of this up, people go, whoa, what are you going to do? What are you going to do? Well, you're not going to do anything because you didn't even want to. There's Joe trying to go up a flight of steps. He has a little trouble from time to time. Got bad legs. And he just slips and falls.
He's a little wobbly. He's a little wobbly, you know. He's got a little osteo or something. He needs some calcium.
Oh, I don't know how can you not laugh at this? It is so absurd. Whoever did this, they deserve an award because I've never. So you remember when Eddie Murphy did the bit about his aunt falling down the steps? And his comedy routine.
So it just keeps going.
And it took her a half an hour to fall down the steps. This guy, he knows Eddie Murphy. That is some funny stuff right there. Oh, that made me feel good. So, yeah, now we got the Nord Stream. Now we got even bigger issues there. And everybody, here's fun fact for you. We're headed towards World War III. And China is so aligned with Russia now that we're no longer the dominant world power. If they get further into bed with each other, we're toast, because they'll have the population between those two countries. You're talking over 2 billion people on a planet with 7 billion people. We'll have 300 million people in our country, right? Or 330. The amount that they'll be able to do, the war slog they'll be able to put up, the amount of soldiers that they'll be able to draft into a world war, they'll be able to draft more people than we actually have in our own country. Yep. And nuclear weapons are going to be used, folks. I mean, that's just what's going to happen. And I think in America, people have become so just nonchalant and so content in the fact that these things will never happen. I don't think that people really knew, like, say, the Bay of Pigs, the Cuban crisis, the Cuban Missile Crisis, and a lot of the Cold War, that on many occasions we were on the precipice of literally firing nuclear weapons. We have now backed one of the most, even if they're half right about Putin, what this administration says, we are talking about still the most dangerous man on earth. And we're poking him with a stick and saying, come on, fight us, right? But what if he does? What are we going to do? Hit him with a bigger stick? A nuclear weapon? I mean, there is no good outcome here. And we don't want to even attempt to do diplomacy. So I don't understand what the point is. And
Agreed.
Right. So that was a good visual right there.
You actually do understand what the point is. Unfortunately, we understand fully what the point is. And the point is there's two reasons why this is happening. And one of them is about energy. It's so off. I mean, almost all the time. When we're talking about war in the United States, we're talking about energy.
That's what we're talking
Some
about.
sort of natural resource. It's usually oil. This time it's natural gas. The U.S. never liked the idea of the European Union getting its natural gas from Russia. We also have been trying to swing Ukraine to the European Union, to the U.S., to the West for quite a while, even though we agreed that we wouldn't in the Minsk
We
agreement.
signed treaties saying we would never do such a thing. It was same with Crimea, same with Georgia.
Yeah, all that. So you have all that going on. Much of Ukraine, many people don't know, it was like very 50-50 for the war, people that aligned with Russia versus people who were kind of more westernized. It's also chock full of a large contingent of Nazis, believe it or not. There's an entire battalion, the Azov battalion, that they don't like to talk about, but it's their favorite because they're the most brutal. They're all Nazis. They all have Third Reich tattoos. So Ukraine is a mess, and up until 2019, sources like the Washington Post and the New York Times would report that it was a hotbed for illegal arms dealing, the top hotbed for illegal arms dealing in the world. And all of a sudden, magically, it's perfect. It's a perfect place to dump $100 billion worth of weapons into without collecting any receipts. Because when Rand Paul asked for an inspector general to write receipts, we decided that wasn't cool. And we just decided that the Ukrainians can be trusted with handwritten receipts, some of which have already been lost, unfortunately. So yeah, what a mess. But so it's about fuel. It's about natural gas, not only cutting Russia off from supplying it, but there's a ton of natural gas in Ukraine under the soil. And eventually American companies are going to be in Ukraine.
Second largest
for natural gas.
Second
for natural
gas
reserves. And bringing it right over to Europe, selling it right to Europe. So that's a big deal. I mean, there's a reason why Hunter Biden was hooked up with Burisma, a natural gas company in Ukraine. Oh my God, how are these things keep connecting? What a weird deal. So it's pretty freaking obvious. It's pretty freaking obvious what's going on. So that's a big one. And then it's, another thing with Russia. It's just another way to try to, I think they'd love to see a regime change in Russia. But I think that we're not only pushing ourselves towards a World War III scenario in armament, and in destruction sort of standpoints, but I think we're also pushing our way into another sort of like historic level dictatorship, and it won't be Vladimir Putin. It'll be the guy who comes after Vladimir Putin. It'll make Vladimir Putin. We'll be begging to have Vladimir Putin back. That's what I predict.
Isn't that the way that we normally do it too? Like the guy that we replace, we always end up with the worst guy. The United States as a government entity has been nation building since World War II, after World War II. Where the rest of the world, around the world, and most of these countries that are just replete with energy, they hate our guts because we do more damage to them than we ever help them. And when we're done with them, whomever comes in and takes over and then treats them like garbage, murders them, whatever, we don't care. We're the ones who put Saddam Hussein into power. It's because of us that the mullahs and the Ayatollahs took over in Iran. That's 100% on us. The reason the Taliban was in Afghanistan is because of the United States people. We're the ones who put all this in motion. We did. Libya wasn't even really that bad a country. They just didn't want to share with the United States, and they wanted to go off our dollar. So we made sure that they suffered too. And when they didn't suffer enough, it just killed more and more Gaddafi. Everybody thinks that we're the good guys. I'm here to tell anybody who's listening to this, we are rarely, ever the good guys. The people in the United States do very good things regularly, routinely. And you can look at them and you can be very proud of that. But our government, Our government is a despot government like any else's. We're just better at doing it than anybody else. I used to always laugh when people bring up the KGB, right? And how horrible they were during the Cold War. Who do you think they learned it from?
Right.
Our CIA. They were trying to be our CIA. That was their deal, right? But we're the good guys. We're always the good guys. You know, remember that for people old enough, you remember those movies from the 1980s. And if you weren't in America, everywhere you were, somebody for sure was going to go, you can't do this. I'm an American. Yeah, we can do it. Because you're an American, you dumbass. Because while we don't necessarily want to accept it, around the world, Americans, people, us, not our government, us, they don't like us because our government represents us as an abusive parent. That's how we're represented to the whole world, and that we're willing to go along with it. So they hate us too, and they probably should.
Yeah, just a quick picture here of President Ronald Reagan in the Oval Office meeting with the Mujahideen, which was the name for the Taliban. This is the Taliban. We were arming the Taliban. We were arming the Taliban in Afghanistan because we were fighting a proxy war with Russia. Yet again, another proxy war with Russia. And then the Taliban was a group we ended up having to fight, apparently. So this is what we do. We arm them. And we did it in Syria again, the Taliban, same group. And then we had to go fight them, still fighting them. The whole thing you're talking about in Libya with, with Gaddafi and Chris Stevens, the ambassador, and everything that happened in Benghazi, that was all just a weapons deal. That was a weapons deal going bad.
That's right.
We were hawking more weapons as we do. The United States is the single largest weapons dealer, black market, mind you, weapons dealer, not even just on the top. They're the single largest black market weapons dealer of all time in history on the globe. Period. End of sentence. And I mean, we know we literally have government programs where we walk guns to hardened criminals, and we've gotten our own guys killed with those same guns. Because we like to deal weapons. It's fun.
We flooded our own cities with more cocaine than you could possibly shake a stick at. An enormous amount. The Crips and the Bloods became weaponized because of it. And they weren't fighting with bats and knives anymore. They were all armed with AK-47s, right? And I mean, real battle ready kind of stuff. Crack cocaine became an epidemic because our CIA was bringing in literally hundreds of thousands of tons of cocaine and throwing in the streets to do what? To raise money to buy weapons for the Contras down in South America. That's what that whole thing was about. That's the whole deal with Reagan and Ollie North and the CIA. They were willing, just like we're still willing to do today, folks. They were willing to literally kill poor people with drugs, kill them dead. And if that didn't do it, put them in jail and get rid of them, raise money so that we could fight an illegal war in South America. Yeah, we're the good guys. Sure.
Well, I can't really speak on that today. Ollie, would you like to talk to him, Ollie? Will you take this one, Ollie? Yeah. Well, I can't really talk about that. Okay, Ronnie. Yeah.
And Ollie North.
We know you did some shady ass shit, dude.
And Ollie North still gets paid $50,000 to go talk. He gets paid by Fox News and MSNBC to come on and be one of their insider intel guys. We sold out minority communities in this country to wage an illegal war, and everybody acts like it's okay.
How amazingly did they set in with Operation Mockingbird when they set out to infiltrate the press, Hollywood, and all of our entertainment facets in order to push government narratives and propaganda into those outlets. When they set out to do that, Operation Mockingbird has been declassified. We know it was a thing. We actually took it from the Nazis. We learned it from them. And so we know they did this, but it's gone to a level now where they don't even have to hide. They're not even like just paying reporters or secretly putting plants in these organizations. They literally have people openly, former CIA fucking directors and everything else, right, on staff. Like, so if CNN wants to find out if the CIA has done anything incorrectly, they ask the former director of the CIA if they've done anything incorrectly, and he always goes, no, we're all good, guys. And it's like, okay, and people just take that as gold, and it's like,
Yeah, sure.
wait a minute, why would that guy not say that? You know what I mean? What? You know, like, that's okay. Well, that's your source to find out if the CIA is corrupt or they're doing something wrong. Is the CIA guy smart? Okay.
Well, because he wouldn't lie, just running the largest covert operation in the world. Why would he lie? And so this is just something that we've talked about privately numerous times. One of the things that irritates me is that people are so willing to buy all this and keep their head in the sand and act like none of this is happening. The fact that we haven't had a revolution already is quite shocking to me, because there's the reasons that we fought a revolution to begin with were literally child's play compared to the crap that we are now just sitting back and accepting like it's no big deal. And I don't think that the people in this country, we're so fat and we are so engorged with largesse of everything, money, food, entertainment, you name it. We are so loaded with it. Even our poorest people in this country are going to hate. They're going to hate hearing this. Even people on full and total welfare in the world picture are still in the top 7% money earners on planet Earth. Nobody in this country actually knows what abject poverty is because they've never experienced it and they've never seen it. If you think going into a large city, into a bad area, and seeing a bunch of trashy buildings, that's poverty, you have no idea what you're talking about. Go to Darfur. Go to Darfur one time, and then go to Beirut. Then we could talk about your understanding of abject poverty. Go to India, where literally 70% of the people that are there are malnutrition because they're so desperately poor. Go into the subcontinent of Africa and ask people who have the idea of even having so much as a wooden floor in their home is beyond comprehension, let alone the amenities that we have here to make life easy. We don't know what poor is. And so we get ourselves all worked up about things that don't amount to anything.
Yeah, I mean, if you're an average American, you're in the top 1% of earners in the entire world.
Period.
Just to be an average American. So,
right.
But interestingly enough, we talked about global warming earlier and climate change and all that stuff. And, a very astute observation and from a lot of the research he's done, Bjorn Lomborg, who's a climatologist, he's pointed out the fact, and he's not the only one, and there's been a ton of people that pointed this out, that if you really wanted to help the earth, if you really wanted to do good for the environment and to clean things up, the number one thing you could do, rather than spending billions of dollars on green energy and carbon capture and carbon taxation and all this stuff, is just to lift those poorer countries out of that driving poverty that they're in. Because when those third world, those developing nations, when they're in that grinding poverty that they're in, they pollute worse than anyone. It's disgusting. And part of the fact that they have so much disease and so much famine and so many issues is because of the nasty standards they have, because they're the horrible conditions they live in, because they're so damn poor. And if we wanted to really make a difference and put a dent in pollution and in harm to the planet, one really fast way would be to shift that money instead over to those, very, very, very poor nations, and not just don't give it to the governments of those nations. Go in on the ground and give it to the regular people. You don't only you not only give them a stipend or something, or you not only give them a little bit of money to get them up and running, but you give them one of my favorite missions I've ever heard of from churches and stuff. There's a really cool church mission where they give microloans to villagers in all these different third world nations, and they don't necessarily expect them to pay it back. Like that's not an issue. Like, but it's under those circumstances, because that's part of the idea of like learning how to handle this, right? Like we give you money, no, it's interest free, by the way, and then you use that money to build something, and then you pay back your debt, and that's happening. And when those people actually build something and they pay back that debt, they do it with pride. You know what I mean? They do it with this very overwhelming feeling that they've done something really amazing. And that alone would clean the earth up dramatically if we would actually shift to stuff like that, instead of thinking about putting more windmills out off the coast of freaking, New Jersey, that are ruining sea life and birds and all kinds of crap. Half of them don't work. It's just so much of this stuff that isn't even there. And then we've talked about this. The largest investors in green energy are the oil companies and gas companies themselves. So if they're the largest investors in it, what does that tell you?
Right. They're the ones
playing
that are
both sides.
the train. Right. They're the ones driving the change, because they understood some time back that if they didn't play in America the green energy game, that they were going to be left out. So of course they're going to play both sides, because their model wasn't going to work moving forward if they were just going to be into the standard fuels and ways of conducting electricity that we were already using. So the only way to make that work for them was to play both sides. And for anybody that's not paying attention, the politicians that you probably keep voting for over and over and over again simply because of the letter after their name, these people are raking in millions and millions of dollars off green energy. They don't care that green energy really isn't working. And if the grid really can't handle it, that we are in no way, shape, or form ready for green energy like this. It's a much slower process and could be done smarter, but the technology is just not there yet. But they don't care, and they're willing to sacrifice you because they want to make their millions now while they're here and alive. So that's the other ugly backside to it, is that the politicians, the bureaucrats, the lobbyists are all making a killing off of this. And the proof here to start our conversation with East Palestine, Ohio, is that they don't care about us at all. And that's the proof positive, right? The government, and these corporations, these massive corporations, they don't care any longer about whether you live or die. Chad and I used to joke about things like, well, yeah, that's what corporations do. They kill their customers because that's a good way to make a profit. But these corporations are different these days. Their customers are their shareholders, and the people who aren't their shareholders mean nothing to them. So they will destroy them if that's what they need to do. And that's just the way that it is. We don't have a playing field any longer. We have their field. Their field doesn't allow us to play on it unless we grease their wheels, which is something that Norfolk can't do with their own damn wheels. That's why we had a train wreck. So, yeah, I agree. And there are ways out of abject poverty here, and we have the power to do it. And you know what we're going to do with that power? Nothing. We can't even clean up the problems in our own damn country. We have more than enough money to do it. If you really think about it, and then I'll shut the hell up for a minute. If you think about it, the amount of money that we just gave the Ukraine could have fixed almost every damn infrastructure problem we have in this country. And nope, not doing anything about it.
Yeah. And worse, because that money isn't like money we have. It's fake money we have to print, and then that drives up inflation, and it makes us all pay more for the things we buy.
It makes the dollars you have worth less.
Modern monetary theorists can do all kinds of nasty things to nasty parts of my body I don't really need to go into, but they can kiss it. That's what I'm trying to say. I mean, if you're not able to acknowledge the fact that money printing, fiat currency, causes inflation, then I don't think we can even have a conversation. And there's so many people who just refuse to admit that.
Yeah.
They just feel like you can just print and print and print, and it doesn't matter. It doesn't change anything. It's like, well, that defies all logic. That defies all the laws of supply and demand. I mean, when something is ubiquitous, it becomes worthless, right? If there's more of it, it's less expensive, right? I mean, it seems fairly obvious, right? The reason why gold or diamonds are worth a lot of money is because they're hard to come by. But if you just keep making, if you were to just facsimile a shit ton of them, all of a sudden diamonds wouldn't be worth very much now, would they? So yeah, CZ baby, that's America.
Well, to be fair,
Yeah.
diamonds aren't rare. The De Beers family made sure that everybody thought they were rare, but they actually aren't.
Well, now there's apparently only one way to get diamonds, and that's with a bunch of slaves digging around for them.
That's right.
And not everybody can afford to round up a bunch of people like that. So
they're not called blood diamonds for no reason. Because they're spilling lots of blood to get them.
Like all the stuff that goes into the cobalt and stuff that goes into these batteries and all the stuff for the green energy, the atrocities that are taking place with mining that stuff. You're aware of. So,
well, we can go on all day, but is that what
we got an hour in?
Yeah.
So right on, brother. You want to wrap this thing up?
Yeah, we'll start wrapping this up. So my last point that I'd like to make is that if you're an American citizen, you should always be distrustful of your government. They are not on your side. And the evidence that they do not care about you, your health, your well-being, your family, your children, or anything about you in particular is the things that are going on right now. If COVID didn't prove it, and now and what's happening here in East Palestine doesn't do it, then I would suggest that you may be the dumbest son of a bitch on planet Earth and do us all a favor and never vote again.
And try not to procreate at the same time because we don't need any more of that.
Please don't do that.
The last thing I'll say is there comes a time, folks, when you have to stand up. You can call your congressman or, shake your fist at the TV cameras or whatever you're doing, complain, hold town hall meetings, all that stuff. But at some point you're going to have to actually put something on the line if you want to defend yourself. And that's what defense is all about. You are defending yourself. If you are defending yourself, you are putting yourself on the line. But it's worth it. It's worth it to defend yourself. So I hope the people of East Palestine, I wish them nothing but the best. I'm praying for them, and I hope that they can get this thing figured out. But I really, truly would like to give them a friendly nudge to say, guys, you're gonna have to get the grease, the squeaky wheel. If they weren't going to grease their own bearings on their train, make sure they grease you, and do whatever it takes. And if that means risking arrest, if you get arrested, then people will rally around you. I'm sure a GoFundMe will make sure it takes care of all of your expenses, and you'll have more and more people coming to your cause. So that's all. I'll end it with that by saying, stand up, folks, stand up.
That was beautifully said. On my take from what you just said is be your own solution, and that's probably a pretty damn good idea.
Amen. And with that, everybody, thank you so much for watching, and stay tuned. There will be more to come. We'll hit you up again next week, and we hope you enjoy.
Appreciate everybody.
Be sure to subscribe. Be sure to leave us a comment if you'd like. Give us a like if you would. Help us get this thing rolling. Y'all take care. Peace out.